The gentle hum of the International Space Station's life support systems had become a constant companion. A soothing white noise that I barely noticed anymore. That is, until it stuttered. I jolted awake, my heart racing. In the dim light of my sleeping quarters, I could see my breath forming small clouds in the suddenly chilly air. Something was wrong. "Shit," I muttered, fumbling for the intercom. "Control, this is Dr. Emily Richardson. We've got fluctuations in life support. What's going on down there?" Static crackled for a moment before a familiar voice responded. "Copy that, Dr. Richardson. We're aware of the issue and working to resolve it. Stand by." I frowned. The voice belonged to Dr. James Anderson, our chief medical officer. What was he doing in mission control at this hour? Shaking off my unease, I decided to investigate. As I made my way through the cramped corridors of the ISS, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The station felt different somehow, as if the very air was charged with an unseen energy. I found Captain Michael O'Connor in the Destiny Laboratory module, his face illuminated by the soft blue glow of multiple computer screens. He looked up as I entered, his usually cheerful expression replaced by one of concern. "Emily," he said, his Irish lilt more pronounced in his stress. "You felt it too, eh?" I nodded, moving to join him at the console. "What's causing it? Solar flare? Micrometeorite impact?" Michael shook his head, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "Nothing so mundane, I'm afraid. Take a look at this." He pulled up a series of graphs, each showing wildly oscillating lines. "These are the power readings from the past hour. We've got massive energy spikes coming from..." He trailed off, his brow furrowing. I leaned in closer, trying to make sense of the data. "Coming from where, Michael?" "That's just it," he said softly. "According to these readings, the energy is coming from a part of the station that doesn't exist." A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the malfunctioning temperature controls. "What do you mean doesn't exist?" Before Michael could respond, the lab door hissed open. Colonel Benjamin Foster strode in, his imposing figure filling the doorway. Despite the early hour, he looked impeccable in his NASA uniform, not a silver hair out of place. "At ease," he said, though neither Michael nor I had made any move to salute. His steel-grey eyes swept over us, lingering on the computer screens. "I see you've noticed our little anomaly." Michael straightened, his jaw set. "With all due respect, sir, what the hell is going on? These readings are classified," Foster cut him off sharply, "and will remain so. I suggest you both forget what you've seen here. That's an order." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Colonel, if there's a problem with the station, we need to know. The safety of the crew is my primary concern, Dr. Richardson," Foster interrupted again. "And I can assure you, everything is under control. Now, I believe you both have duties to attend to." With that, he turned on his heel and left, the door sliding shut behind him with a finality that felt ominous. Michael and I exchanged bewildered looks. "What the fuck was that about?" I whispered. He shook his head, his face grim. "I don't know, Em. But I've got a bad feeling about this. Something's not right up here." As the days passed, the sense of unease aboard the station grew. The life support glitches continued, though never for long enough to cause real concern. But it was the little things that started to add up. Equipment moved without explanation, hushed conversations that abruptly ceased when others approached, and always, the feeling of being watched. I threw myself into my work, hoping to distract myself from the growing tension. As the station's lead biologist, I had plenty to keep me busy. We were conducting groundbreaking research on the effects of microgravity on cellular regeneration. At least that's what I thought we were doing. It was during one of my routine experiments that I first noticed something truly bizarre. I was examining a culture of human stem cells when I saw it, a pattern of division unlike anything I'd ever encountered. The cells were replicating at an impossible rate, yet showing no signs of degradation. "This can't be right," I muttered, adjusting the microscope. But the image remained the same. These cells weren't just regenerating, they were evolving. A hand on my shoulder made me jump. I spun around to find Lieutenant Olivia Brooks standing there, a finger pressed to her lips in a shushing gesture. "Not here," she whispered, her eyes darting nervously around the lab. "Meet me in the cupola in an hour. Come alone." Before I could respond, she was gone, leaving me with more questions than answers. The cupola, with its panoramic views of Earth, was usually my favourite place on the station. But as I floated there an hour later, waiting for Olivia, it felt more like a fishbowl. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me, though the module was empty, save for myself. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Olivia's voice startled me out of my reverie. She gestured to the blue-green orb of Earth below us. "Makes you feel small." I turned to face her, taking in her appearance. Olivia had always been fit. You had to be to qualify for long-duration spaceflight. But now she looked different. Her skin had a strange, almost luminous quality to it. And her eyes, had they always been that vivid shade of green? "Olivia, what's going on?" I asked, keeping my voice low. The power fluctuations, Foster's secrecy, these impossible cell cultures. Something's not right here. She sighed, suddenly looking much older than her 45 years. "You're right, Emily. There's so much I want to tell you, but..." She glanced over her shoulder as if expecting to find someone listening. "I'm not sure who to trust anymore." "You can trust me," I assured her, reaching out to squeeze her hand. I was shocked by how cold it felt. "Whatever's happening, we can figure it out together." Olivia gave me a sad smile. "I hope you're right, because if what I suspect is true, we're all in terrible danger." She took a deep breath, seeming to steel herself. "Have you ever heard of Project Lazarus?" I shook my head, the name sending an involuntary shiver down my spine. "It's a top-secret initiative," Olivia continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Officially, it's about extending human lifespan for long-duration spaceflight. But the reality... God, Emily, the reality is so much worse." Just then, the station's intercom crackled to life. "Attention all personnel, this is Colonel Foster. Report to the Destiny module immediately for an emergency briefing. That is all." Olivia's face drained of colour. "It's happening," she murmured. "God help us all." As we made our way to Destiny, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were hurtling towards some terrible revelation. The corridors seemed to stretch endlessly, each turn bringing us closer to a truth I wasn't sure I wanted to face. We arrived to find the rest of the crew already assembled. Colonel Foster stood at the front, his face a mask of grim determination. Dr. Anderson hovered nearby, clutching a tablet to his chest like a shield. "Ladies and gentlemen," Foster began, his voice carrying easily in the confined space. "I know there have been concerns raised about certain anomalies aboard the station. It's time you knew the truth." He paused, his eyes sweeping over each of us. "What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level. If anyone breathes a word of this to the ground, the consequences will be severe." I felt Olivia tense beside me. Whatever was coming, it was big. Foster continued, "For the past 6 months, we've been conducting experiments as part of Project Lazarus. Our goal is nothing less than the conquest of death itself." A murmur ran through the assembled crew. I heard Professor William Carter, our quantum physicist, mutter, "My God," under his breath. Using a combination of stem cell therapy, nanotechnology, and other methods, Foster went on, we've made unprecedented breakthroughs in cellular regeneration. We're on the verge of achieving functional immortality. The Colonel's words hung in the air, heavy with implication. I felt my mind reeling, trying to process the enormity of what he was saying. Immortality. It was the stuff of science fiction, not something that should be possible here and now. "But sir," Captain O'Connor spoke up, his voice tight with barely suppressed anger. What about the power fluctuations? The life support issues? You're putting the entire crew at risk. Foster's expression hardened. Sacrifices must be made for the greater good, Captain. The potential benefits to humanity far outweigh any temporary discomfort. Discomfort? I couldn't hold my tongue any longer. Colonel, we're not talking about a few blown fuses here. These anomalies could kill us all. That's enough. Srenia, Dr. Richardson. Foster Snelser. I didn't call this meeting to debate ethics. You're all here because you're the best in your fields. I expect you to rise to the challenge and help us push the boundaries of human potential. As Foster continued to outline the project, my gaze wandered to the faces of my crewmates. Some, like Dr. Anderson, looked excited by the possibilities. Others, like Michael, wore expressions of barely concealed horror. But it was Olivia who truly caught my attention. She stood rigid, her eyes fixed on a point somewhere beyond Foster's shoulder. And as I watched, a single drop of blood trickled from her nose. "Olivia," I whispered, reaching for her. "Are you okay?" She turned to me, her eyes unfocused. "I can hear them, Emily," she murmured. "The voices, they're so loud." Before I could respond, Olivia's eyes rolled back in her head and she collapsed. The room erupted into chaos as we rushed to her side. "Get her to the med bay now," Foster barked, all pretense of calm authority gone. As Michael and I carried Olivia's limp form through the station, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had crossed a line. Whatever Project Lazarus was, whatever it promised, the cost was already proving too high. Little did I know, the true horrors were only just beginning. The next few days passed in a blur of frantic activity and mounting dread. Olivia remained in a coma, her vital signs fluctuating wildly. Dr. Anderson worked tirelessly to stabilize her, but nothing seemed to help. I spent every free moment I had researching Project Lazarus, trying to piece together what was really happening. But information was scarce, and what little I could find was heavily redacted. It was during one of these late-night research sessions that I received an unexpected visitor. Professor Carter knocked softly on the frame of my sleeping quarters, his usually neat appearance disheveled. "Dr. Richardson," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "May I come in?" I nodded, gesturing for him to enter. As the door slid shut behind him, Carter's shoulders sagged as if a great weight had been lifted. "I can't do this anymore," he said, sinking onto the edge of my bed. "The lies, the secrecy, it's eating me alive." I leaned forward, my heart racing. "What do you mean, Professor? What do you know about Project Lazarus?" He laughed, a hollow sound devoid of humor. "What don't I know? I helped design the quantum entanglement system that makes it all possible. God forgive me." "Quantum entanglement," I repeated, confused. "I thought this was about cellular regeneration." Carter shook his head, his eyes haunted. "That's just the tip of the iceberg, Dr. Richardson. The cellular regeneration, the nanotech, it's all in service of something far more ambitious and far more dangerous." He leaned in close, his voice dropping even lower. "They're trying to bridge realities, Emily, to tap into the fundamental fabric of the universe itself. The power fluctuations, the anomalies, they're side effects of punching holes in space-time." I felt the blood drain from my face as the implications sank in. But why? What could possibly be worth that kind of risk? "Immortality," Carter replied simply. "Not just of the body, but of consciousness itself. They believe they can transfer human minds into the quantum fabric of reality, preserving them for eternity." "That's insane," I breathed, my mind reeling. "It's not possible." Carter's expression darkened. "I'm afraid it is possible. We've already done it. And the results, God help us, the results are horrifying." Before I could press him for more details, an alarm blared through the station. Red emergency lights began to flash, casting eerie shadows across Carter's face. "Warning! Hull breach! Detected in Module C," an automated voice announced. "All personnel evacuate immediately." Carter's eyes widened in terror. "It's happening," he whispered. "They're breaking through." "Who's breaking through?" I demanded, but he was already moving, pulling me towards the door. "No time to explain," he said urgently. "We need to get to the escape pods. Now." As we raced through the corridors, the station groaned and shuddered around us. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, sealing off sections of the ISS. We rounded a corner and nearly collided with Michael and Dr. Anderson. The latter's pristine lab coat was spattered with what looked disturbingly like blood. "What the hell is going on?" Michael shouted over the blaring alarms. "The experiment," Anderson replied, his eyes wild. "It worked. It actually worked, but we couldn't control it. They're coming through." "Who's coming through?" I demanded, grabbing Anderson by the shoulders. "What have you done?" But before he could answer, a scream echoed down the corridor, a sound of such primal terror that it made my blood run cold. "Move!" Carter yelled, pushing us forward. "Get to the Soyuz!" We sprinted towards the escape capsule, the screams growing louder behind us. As we reached the airlock, I chanced to glance back. What I saw will haunt me for the rest of my days. A figure stood at the far end of the corridor, silhouetted against the flashing red lights. But it wasn't human, not anymore. Its body rippled and shifted, as if struggling to maintain cohesion in our reality. Tendrils of darkness writhed around it, reaching out hungrily. And then it spoke, in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "We are eternal," it said, the words reverberating in my skull. "We are Legion. And we are coming." "Get in!" Michael yelled, shoving me into the Soyuz capsule. The others piled in after me, Carter slamming his hand on the emergency release. As the airlock cycled and the capsule detached from the station, I caught one last glimpse of the ISS through the porthole. Lights flickered erratically across its surface, and in some sections the metal itself seemed to be melting. "My God," Anderson whispered, his face ashen. "What have we done?" The descent to Earth was a nightmare of turbulence and terror. None of us spoke, each lost in our own thoughts as we hurtled through the atmosphere. I couldn't shake the image of that thing in the corridor or the sound of its impossible voice. We crashed down in the Kazakh steppe, the impact jarring every bone in my body. As we stumbled out of the capsule on shaky legs, we were immediately surrounded by a team in hazmat suits. "Quarantine protocol initiated," a voice announced through a speaker. "Please remain calm and cooperate fully." But as they led us to waiting helicopters, I noticed something odd. These weren't NASA personnel, or even Roscosmos. The insignia on their suits belonged to a private company I'd never seen before. We were separated, each taken to a different facility for debriefing. But as the days turned into weeks, it became clear that this was no ordinary quarantine procedure. We were being held in isolation, our contact with the outside world strictly limited. My room was more of a cell, sterile and white, with a single bed, a desk, and a bathroom. The only window was a small, reinforced pane of glass set high in the wall, offering a tantalizing glimpse of blue sky but little else. Every day, a team of scientists in hazmat suits would come to run tests. Blood draws, brain scans, physical examinations. They poked and prodded as if I were some rare specimen. Which, I supposed, I was. It was during one of these sessions that I first noticed the changes. I was sitting on the examination table waiting for Dr. Abigail Montgomery, the lead researcher assigned to my case, to finish reviewing my latest test results. "Fascinating," she murmured, her eyes fixed on her tablet. "The cellular regeneration rate is off the charts. And these neural patterns, I've never seen anything like it." "What are you talking about?" I demanded, my patience wearing thin. "What's happening to me?" Dr. Montgomery looked up, seeming to remember I was there. Her eyes widened slightly, and she took an involuntary step back. "Your eyes," she whispered. "They're changing." I jumped off the table and rushed to the small mirror on the wall. What I saw made my blood run cold. My irises, once a deep brown, were now shot through with threads of silver. As I watched, the threads seemed to move, shifting like quicksilver. "What the fuck?" I breathed, touching my face in disbelief. "It's the quantum entanglement," a familiar voice said from the doorway. I spun around to see Professor Carter being led in by 2 guards. He looked haggard, his clothes hanging loosely on his now gaunt frame. "William!" I exclaimed, moving towards him. But the guards stepped between us, their hands on their weapons. "It's all right," Dr. Montgomery assured them. "Let them talk. This could be valuable for our research." As the guards stepped back, Carter continued, his voice low and urgent. "The experiment didn't just affect our bodies, Emily. It changed us on a fundamental level. We're connected to something. Something vast and ancient and hungry." I felt a chill run down my spine. "The entity from the station? The one that spoke?" Carter nodded grimly. "That was just the beginning. What we tapped into. It's beyond our comprehension. And now it's aware of us. Of all of us." "But what does it want?" I asked, dreading the answer. "To live," he replied simply. "To experience. To consume. And we've given it a doorway into our reality." Before I could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, and I could hear shouting in the hallway. "It's happening again," Carter said, his eyes wide with fear. "They're coming through." Dr. Montgomery rushed to the door, shouting orders to the guards. But as she reached for the handle, the metal began to warp and bubble as if it were melting. "Run!" I yelled, grabbing Carter's arm and pulling him towards the window. But it was too late. The door exploded inward, and a wave of writhing darkness poured into the room. I caught glimpses of impossible geometries, of eyes and mouths, where no eyes and mouths should be, and always, always, that terrible voice. "We are eternal. We are legion. And we have come." The next few hours were a blur of chaos and terror. Somehow, Carter and I managed to escape the facility, but the horrors we witnessed along the way will haunt me forever. Researchers and guards alike consumed by the darkness, their bodies twisting into new, horrifying forms, the very fabric of reality seeming to tear at the seams. We stole a car from the parking lot and drove for hours, putting as much distance between us and the facility as possible. But even as we fled, I could feel the changes within me accelerating. My vision sharpened to impossible degrees, allowing me to see spectra of light invisible to normal humans. My mind raced with calculations and insights that seemed to come from nowhere. "It's not just us," Carter said as we sped down an empty highway. "The effect is spreading. Every person who came into contact with us, with the artifacts from the station, they're all potential vectors." I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles white. "So what do we do? How do we stop this?" Carter was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with resignation. "I don't think we can stop it, Emily. The best we can hope for is to contain it, to warn people before it's too late." We drove through the night, stopping only when absolutely necessary. At each gas station or rest stop, we saw more signs of the spreading anomaly. People with silver-threaded eyes, moving with an unnatural grace. Strange distortions in the air, like heat shimmer, but more substantial. It was at one of these stops that we first saw the news reports, bizarre phenomena occurring around the globe, gravitational anomalies, time distortions, even reports of shadow people glimpsed at the corners of vision. The world was changing and humanity was woefully unprepared. We tried to warn people to spread the word about what was really happening, but who would believe us? To most, we were just 2 more crackpots spouting doomsday prophecies. It was during one of these attempts to raise the alarm that disaster struck. We were at a small-town newspaper office, trying to convince the editor to run our story, when I felt it. A surge of otherworldly energy, more powerful than anything I'd experienced before. "William," I gasped, clutching my head, "it's happening, they're coming through." The editor, a portly man named Frank, looked at us in confusion. "What are you talking about? Who's coming through?" But before we could answer, reality itself seemed to fracture. The air split open like a wound, and through the tear poured a tide of nightmares. Entities that defied description, all tentacles and eyes and grasping mouths. In the chaos that followed, Carter and I were separated. The last I saw of him, he was being pulled into one of the rifts, his body elongating impossibly as he screamed. I ran, my enhanced physiology allowing me to move faster than any normal human. But even as I fled, I could feel the changes within me accelerating. My skin rippled and shifted, struggling to maintain its form. My thoughts became a jumble of human concerns and alien insights. For days, I wandered in a daze, watching as the world I knew crumbled around me. Cities fell to the invading entities, their populations transformed or consumed. The sky itself seemed to change, taking on hues that had no name in any human language. And through it all, I felt the pull, the connection to something vast and incomprehensible calling me home. It was Colonel Foster who found me in the end, or what was left of him. His body had become a twisted amalgam of flesh and otherworldly energy, pulsing with an inner light that hurt to look at. "Emily," he said, his voice resonating on multiple frequencies. "It's time to embrace our destiny, to become one with the eternal." I wanted to run, to fight, to scream. But I was so tired, so very tired. As Foster reached out to me, his hand dissolving into tendrils of pure energy, I had one last, fleeting thought. We reached for the stars, dreaming of immortality, but in our arrogance we opened a door that should have remained forever closed. And now, as reality itself unravels around us, I realize the terrible truth. Immortality is a curse, not a blessing, and some doors, once opened, can never be shut again. The last thing I saw before Foster's touch unmade me was the earth, beautiful and blue, growing ever more distant as my consciousness expanded beyond the confines of my human form. In that moment, I understood the true price of our ambition. We had sought to conquer death. Instead, we had doomed all of humanity to an eternity of living nightmares. As my being merged with the vast alien intelligence that now permeated our reality, one final human tear slid down my no longer human cheek. A lament for a world lost and a future that would never be. In our quest for the stars, we had instead plunged ourselves into an abyss from which there was no return. The experiment was a success, but at a cost too terrible to comprehend. And as the last vestiges of my human consciousness faded away, I heard once more the voice that had haunted me since that fateful day on the ISS. "We are eternal. We are Legion, and now you are us."